The exact moment Mason Whitmore's pen touched the bankruptcy papers, a 6-year-old girl walked into the boardroom and said 5 words that would save a billion-dollar empire. "Sir, this number is wrong." What happened next changed everything, not just for the desperate billionaire about to lose his family's legacy, but for the struggling single mother who had no idea her daughter was about to rewrite their entire future. This is their story. If you want to see where this goes, stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The fluorescent lights in the Whitmore Technologies executive conference room buzzed with the kind of persistent hum that gets inside your skull after hours of sitting in the same chair. Mason Whitmore had been sitting in that chair for 3 hours now, staring at the same stack of papers, and the sound was driving him insane. Or maybe he was already insane. That would explain a lot. "Mr. Whitmore, if you could just sign here, here, and initial here." The bankruptcy attorney, Gerald something, Mason couldn't remember his last name and didn't care, tapped his gold pen against the pages with mechanical efficiency. "We can have this finalized by end of day." Mason looked at the pen in his own hand. Mont Blanc, a gift from his father on his 21st birthday, back when Whitmore Technologies was still printing money and the future seemed limitless. His father had gripped his shoulder that day, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Everything I built for you. Don't screw it up." Yeah, well, so much for that. "Mr. Whitmore?" "I heard you, Gerald." "It's Jerome." "Sure." Mason rubbed his eyes. When was the last time he'd slept? Really slept. Not just collapsed for 3 hours before his son woke up crying from another nightmare? Tuesday? Last week? Time had stopped meaning anything around month 18 of the company's death spiral. Across the table, the chief financial officer, Marcus Chen, who'd been with the company since before Mason was born, sat with his hands folded, staring at nothing. Marcus hadn't said a word in 45 minutes. What was there to say? The numbers didn't lie. They never lied. Whitmore Technologies, the manufacturing empire his grandfather started in 1952, the company his father expanded into a household name, the business that employed 4,000 people across 6 states, all of it was about to become a footnote in a bankruptcy filing. Mason lowered the pen toward the signature line. His hand was shaking. He hated that it was shaking. 32 years old, and his hand was shaking like an old man's. "Dad always said manufacturing was about precision," he muttered. "Guess I wasn't precise enough." "Sir, this isn't—" Marcus started. "Don't." Mason cut him off. "We both know whose fault this is." That wasn't entirely fair. The market crash hadn't been his fault. The supply chain disasters that followed hadn't been his fault. The Chinese tariffs, the steel prices, the interest rate hikes, none of that was his fault. But the expansion into automated assembly systems? That had been his idea. His big innovation. The thing that was supposed to prove he was more than just a rich kid who inherited his daddy's company. Instead, he'd bet the farm on technology that wasn't ready, with partners who weren't reliable, using money he didn't have. And when it all fell apart, he doubled down instead of cutting his losses. Then doubled down again. And again. Pride. That's what it was. Stupid, poisonous pride. The pen touched the paper. Behind him, the conference room door opened. Mason didn't look up. Probably Jerome's paralegal or someone from accounting coming to witness the signature. They'd want witnesses for this kind of thing. Documentation. Evidence that Mason Whitmore had officially surrendered. Small footsteps crossed the marble floor. Very small footsteps. Mason's head snapped up. A little girl stood 3 feet from the conference table, wearing a pink backpack covered in cartoon unicorns and holding what appeared to be a financial spreadsheet in both hands. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. Dark curly hair pulled into 2 puff balls on either side of her head. Big brown eyes that seemed too serious for a kid. She was staring directly at him. Mason blinked. "Hello?" "Sir," the little girl said, her voice quiet but clear. "This number is wrong." She held up the spreadsheet. The room went silent except for that damned fluorescent buzzing. Jerome, the bankruptcy attorney, laughed. Actually laughed. "Sweetheart, you probably shouldn't be in here. This is a private meeting." "Emma!" The conference room door banged open again, and a woman rushed in, her face flushed with panic. She was maybe 30, wearing a plain gray cardigan over a white blouse, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Mason recognized her vaguely from the 3rd floor. Olivia something. Office assistant. Records department. He'd probably passed her in the hallway 100 times without really seeing her. Emma, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Olivia grabbed for the little girl's hand, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. Sir, I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore. I didn't. She was supposed to stay in my office. I told her to stay in my office. She must have. Ma'am, this is a closed meeting, Jerome said, standing up. You need to remove your child from this number, Emma repeated, louder this time, still holding up the spreadsheet. It's wrong. Look. She pointed at a specific line on the page. Mason felt something shift in his chest. Maybe it was the absolute certainty in her voice. Maybe it was the fact that she was holding a Whitmore Technologies financial spreadsheet and clearly understood what she was looking at. Maybe he was just desperate enough to grab at any distraction that would delay the inevitable. Let me see that. Mr. Whitmore, we really should, Jerome began. I said let me see it. Emma walked forward and placed the spreadsheet on the table in front of him. Her small finger tapped a number in the third column, 18 rows down. There, she said. That's wrong. It should be 9.4 million, not 94 million. Someone moved a decimal point. The room went completely still. Mason stared at the number, then at Emma, then at the number again. Marcus, his voice came out strange, tight. Pull up the master file for Q3 revenue reconciliation. Sir, I don't think. Pull it up, now. Marcus Chen's fingers were already moving across his laptop keyboard, his expression shifting from resigned defeat to something Mason couldn't quite read. Confusion? Concern? Hope? No, not hope. Hope was dangerous. Olivia, I'm so sorry, the woman was still saying, trying to pull Emma toward the door. This won't happen again, I promise. My sitter canceled this morning and I couldn't afford to miss work, and I thought she could just stay quiet in my office with her workbooks, but she must have found the printouts I was reviewing. Hold on. Mason held up one hand without looking away from his CFO. Marcus? Marcus had gone pale. Actually, pale. In 3 hours of signing away the company, Mason hadn't seen him show that much emotion. Pull the raw data feeds, Marcus said to someone on his phone, his voice sharp. All of them. Q2, Q3, Q4. Cross-reference with the consolidated reports. Do it now. What is it? Mason stood up. His heart was pounding. Marcus, what is it? Marcus looked up at Emma, then at Mason, then back at his laptop screen. Jesus Christ, she's right. Jerome, the bankruptcy attorney, laughed again, but it sounded forced this time. That's impossible. We've had 3 different accounting firms review these. They all reviewed the same source file, Marcus said quietly. If the error was in the source file, then every subsequent analysis would carry the same error forward, Mason finished. The pounding in his chest was getting worse. How bad is it? How bad is the mistake? I need 20 minutes to verify, but if this propagated through the entire fiscal year, Marcus was typing faster now, pulling up windows, cross-referencing data. Other executives around the table were leaning forward, whispering to each other. If this is what I think it is. We're not bankrupt, Mason said. It wasn't a question. He could see it in Marcus's face. We're not bankrupt, Marcus confirmed. We're still in trouble. We're still carrying significant debt, but we're not bankrupt. We never were. The room exploded. Voices overlapping, people standing up, someone shouting into a phone to get the full accounting team back into the building immediately. Jerome, the bankruptcy attorney, was demanding to see the raw data himself. 2 other lawyers were already arguing about liability and who was responsible for missing an error of this magnitude. Mason heard none of it. He was looking at Emma, who had stepped back against her mother's legs and was now staring at the floor, clearly overwhelmed by the chaos she'd created. Olivia had wrapped both arms around her daughter protectively, her face cycling through confusion, fear, and something that looked like she might throw up. I'm sorry, Olivia said again, her voice barely audible over the noise. She didn't mean to. Mason walked around the table and crouched down in front of Emma. Up close, he could see she was wearing scuffed sneakers with holes in the toes. Her jeans had been patched at the knee with fabric that didn't quite match. The backpack with the unicorns had a broken zipper held together with a safety pin. But her eyes were sharp, intelligent, absolutely certain. What's your name? He asked. Emma glanced up at her mother, who nodded slightly. Emma Catherine Carter. the little girl whispered. Emma. Mason kept his voice gentle. How did you know that number was wrong? She shrugged, still not quite meeting his eyes. It didn't fit the pattern. All the other numbers in that column go up a little bit each month, but that one was too big, way too big. So I checked the calculations and the decimal point was in the wrong place. You checked the calculations? Mm-hmm. On Mommy's calculator. She pulled a cheap plastic calculator out of her backpack. I like numbers. They make sense. Mason felt something crack open in his chest. When was the last time anything had made sense? You saved my company, he said. Emma's eyes went wide. I did? Yeah, kid, you did. But Emma's bottom lip trembled. Does that mean Mommy still has her job? And just like that, Mason understood. This little girl hadn't walked into a boardroom full of executives and bankruptcy attorneys because she wanted attention or because she was being disruptive. She'd done it because she was terrified that her mother was about to lose her job, terrified that whatever financial catastrophe was happening in this conference room was going to crash down on their lives. A 6-year-old child had looked at a company spreadsheet, spotted an error that 3 accounting firms had missed, and walked into a room full of strangers because she was trying to protect her mother. Mason looked up at Olivia, who had tears streaming down her face. I promise I wasn't trying to spy or anything, Olivia said, her voice breaking. I sometimes bring work home to review because it helps me understand the filing systems better, and Emma likes to help me organize things. She's always been good with patterns, but I never imagined she would. You're not fired, Mason said. I'm not. You're not fired. Neither is your daughter, who, as far as I'm concerned, just became an honorary consultant for Whitmore Technologies. He straightened up and raised his voice over the chaos in the room. Everyone stop talking. The noise cut off. Mason picked up the Mont Blanc pen his father had given him, walked back to the bankruptcy papers, and very deliberately capped it without signing. Meeting's over, he said. Jerome, thank you for your time, but we won't be needing your services today. Marcus, I want a full audit of every financial document we've produced in the last 2 years. Everything. If there's 1 decimal point error, there could be more. I want to know exactly where we stand by tomorrow morning. Yes, sir. Marcus was already making calls. The rest of you get back to work. We've got a company to save. The room emptied quickly after that. Lawyers packing their briefcases, executives hurrying out on their phones, the energy shifting from funeral dirge to frantic hope in the span of minutes. Mason waited until only he, Marcus, Olivia, and Emma remained. Mr. Whitmore, Olivia started. I really am. Don't apologize. Mason sat down heavily in his chair. The adrenaline was starting to fade and exhaustion was crashing over him like a wave. Your daughter just saved 4,000 jobs, including yours. I should be thanking you. She's always been like this, Olivia said quietly, running her hand over Emma's hair. Ever since she was tiny, numbers, patterns, puzzles. She taught herself multiplication when she was 4 because she liked how the times tables made shapes. Is she in school? 1st grade, but they want to... Olivia hesitated. They want to move her up a grade or 2. I said no. I don't want her to feel different from the other kids, you know? She already has a hard enough time making friends. Mason looked at Emma, who was now examining the framed photos on the credenza along the wall. Pictures of Whitmore Technologies through the decades. His grandfather in front of the original factory. His father cutting the ribbon on the new headquarters. Mason himself at various company events, always in a suit, always smiling that empty smile he'd perfected. Do you have kids, Mr. Whitmore? Olivia asked. A son, Jamie. He's 5. Is his mother... Olivia trailed off, clearly realizing she'd stepped into personal territory. She died, Mason said simply. 3 years ago, car accident. I'm so sorry. Yeah, me too. He rubbed his face. It's been just me and Jamie since then, and I've been doing a pretty terrible job of it, if I'm honest. Between the company falling apart and trying to figure out how to be a single parent, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Olivia gave him a small, sad smile. None of us do. I've been raising Emma alone since she was 6 months old. Her father left before she was born, and every single day I wake up and think, today's the day I'm going to screw this up completely. But we're still here, so I guess we're doing something right. Or we're both just really good at improvising. That too. Emma had moved on from the photos and was now studying the architectural model of the new manufacturing facility that was supposed to have been the crown jewel of Mason's expansion plan. The facility that had cost $200 million and still wasn't operational. The facility that had been the final nail in the company's coffin. Or would have been if there actually had been a coffin. "Emma?" Olivia called softly. "Come on, sweetie. We need to let Mr. Whitmore get back to work." "Okay, Mommy." Emma carefully put down the tiny model forklift she'd been examining and returned to her mother's side. She looked up at Mason. "I hope your company gets better." "Me too, kid. And I hope you're not sad anymore." Mason blinked. "What makes you think I'm sad?" Emma tilted her head, considering. "Your eyes look sad. Like the way Mommy's eyes looked when we had to move to the smaller apartment and she said we were okay, but I knew we weren't really okay." Out of the mouths of babes. Olivia's face flushed. "Emma, we shouldn't talk about—" "It's okay," Mason said quietly. "She's not wrong." Olivia gathered Emma's backpack and took her daughter's hand. "Thank you for not firing me. And for being kind to Emma. You didn't have to be." "Yeah, I did." Mason stood up. "She saved us. Both of you did, in a way. If you hadn't brought her to work today, if she hadn't seen those numbers, if she hadn't been brave enough to walk into this room—" He shook his head. "I don't believe in coincidences. Maybe you were supposed to be here." "Maybe," Olivia said softly. They left, Emma's small hand in her mother's, the little girl's unicorn backpack bouncing with each step. Mason stood alone in the conference room, staring at the unsigned bankruptcy papers. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister. "How'd it go? Is it done?" He typed back, "Not exactly." Then he picked up the papers, walked to the industrial shredder in the corner, and fed them through one by one. The sound of ripping paper was the most beautiful thing he'd heard in months. Marcus found him an hour later, still in the conference room, surrounded by printouts and laptop screens showing financial data. "Initial audit results," Marcus said, dropping a folder on the table. "You're going to want to sit down." "I am sitting down." "Then hold on to something." Mason opened the folder. The decimal point error had propagated through 18 months of financial reporting. Every quarterly statement, every investor presentation, every loan application, all of them based on numbers that were wrong by a factor of 10. The company wasn't just not bankrupt. They were actually profitable. Not hugely profitable. Not enough to justify the massive expansion Mason had attempted, but profitable enough to restructure the debt, profitable enough to keep the lights on, profitable enough to survive. "How did nobody catch this?" Mason asked. "We had external auditors. The error was introduced during a software migration last year," Marcus explained. "Someone configured the data import incorrectly. Every number from the Midwest Manufacturing Division came in with the decimal shifted one place. And because the error was consistent, it looked legitimate. The automated checks didn't flag it because mathematically everything added up. It was just wrong. And a 6-year-old spotted it by looking at a printout. A very smart 6-year-old. Marcus sat down. "Mason, I need to ask, what are you going to do about this?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, this is someone's fault. The IT department, the accounting team, the external auditors who signed off on the reports. Someone is legally liable for an error of this magnitude. The board is going to want heads." Mason leaned back in his chair. "The board can want whatever they want. I'm not interested in blame right now. I'm interested in fixing this and making sure it never happens again." "That's very noble, but nothing. We just found out we're not going out of business. You know what that means? It means 4,000 people still have their jobs. It means the factory in Ohio stays open. It means the retirement plans are safe. I'm not going to turn around and start firing people for an honest mistake that happened during a crisis." Marcus studied him. "You've changed." "Have I? 6 months ago, you would have already been demanding resignations. Hell, 6 months ago, you probably would have thrown that little girl and her mother out of the conference room for interrupting." Mason thought about that. 6 months ago, I was drowning. I was so focused on trying to save the company that I forgot there were actual human beings depending on it, including myself." He gestured at the papers spread across the table. "You know what Emma asked me? She asked if her mom would still have her job. That's what she cared about. Not the company, not the billions of dollars, not the legacy or the empire. Just whether her mother could keep working. She's 6. Exactly. She's 6, and she already understands what matters more clearly than I did. Mason stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the Whitmore Technologies campus. He could see employees leaving for the day, walking to their cars, probably wondering if they'd still have jobs tomorrow. I've been so angry for so long. Angry at the market, angry at the bad luck, angry at myself for screwing up, and all that anger was just blinding me. So what now? Now we rebuild. Properly this time. No shortcuts, no ego-driven expansions, no betting the company on unproven technology. We get back to basics, we serve our customers, we take care of our people. He turned back to Marcus. And we start by making sure Olivia Carter knows how much we appreciate what her daughter did today. Marcus smiled. I already had HR put together a bonus. Make it bigger and set up a college fund for Emma. That kid's going places. Already done. You're ahead of me. I've known you since you were in diapers, Mason. I know how you think. Marcus stood up to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, your father would be proud of you right now. For almost bankrupting the company? For remembering it's about more than money. After Marcus left, Mason stayed at the window until the parking lot was empty and the sky had gone dark. His phone buzzed again. The nanny. Jamie won't go to bed until you read him a story. When are you coming home? Mason checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. He'd missed bedtime again, 3rd time this week. On my way, he typed back. But before he left, he took one more look at the unsigned bankruptcy papers in the shredder bin. A 6-year-old girl with a calculator and a unicorn backpack had saved his company. Maybe she'd saved more than that. Maybe she'd saved him too. The next morning, Mason arrived at the office at 6 a.m. to find Olivia already at her desk on the 3rd floor, organizing files. She jumped when she saw him. Mr. Whitmore, I wasn't expecting... It's okay. He held up 2 coffee cups from the shop downstairs. Peace offering, or maybe a thank you offering. I'm not sure what the protocol is when an employee's child saves your entire company. Olivia accepted the coffee with shaking hands. You really didn't have to. Where's Emma? School. She takes the bus from our apartment at 7:30. Olivia wrapped both hands around the cup like she needed the warmth. Mr. Whitmore, I want you to know I've never brought Emma to work before. Yesterday was an emergency. My sitter canceled at the last minute, and I couldn't afford to miss a day, and I thought I could just keep her quiet in my office. But obviously that didn't... Olivia. Mason sat down in the chair across from her desk. You're not in trouble, I promise. I actually came to thank you. For what? Emma's the one who found the error. For raising the kind of kid who would walk into a room full of strangers to try to help her mother. That takes guts. That takes... He searched for the word. Character. You did that. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I'm just trying not to screw her up. You're doing better than that. Mason took a sip of his coffee. It was terrible. He drank it anyway. Can I ask you something? How long have you worked here? Almost 4 years. I started in the mailroom, then moved to records when a position opened up. And in 4 years, how many times have I actually spoken to you? Olivia looked uncomfortable. I don't think... Twice, maybe? 3 times, including yesterday? Mason shook his head. That's not okay. You work for this company. You're part of this team, and I walked past you in the hallway for 4 years like you were invisible. You're the CEO. You have a lot on your mind. That's not an excuse. He set down his coffee cup. I've been thinking about what Emma said yesterday, about patterns and numbers making sense, and I realize she's right. Numbers do make sense. They're logical, consistent, predictable. It's people that are complicated. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that this company is made of people, not spreadsheets. Mr. Whitmore, Mason, please, Mr. Whitmore was my father. Mason, Olivia smiled slightly. What are you trying to say? I'm trying to say I want to do better, not just as a CEO, but as a person. And I think maybe I need help with that. He stood up. HR is going to contact you about some changes to your position and compensation. You'll want to bring Emma by the office later this week. I'd like to thank her properly, if that's okay with you. That's more than okay. That's... Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen what I'm like when I'm actually paying attention to how the company runs. He headed for the door, then stopped. Hey, Olivia, does Emma like puzzles? Not just math puzzles, but like actual puzzles? She loves them. Why? My son Jamie has about 100 puzzles he's never going to finish by himself. Maybe Emma would want to help him out sometime, if you're not busy. Olivia's smile widened. I think she'd like that. Mason nodded and left, feeling lighter than he had in months. Behind him, Olivia sat at her desk, staring at the coffee cup in her hands and wondering what the hell had just happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. Did you get fired? She laughed and typed back, the opposite, I think. Then she got back to work, organizing files with the same careful attention to detail that had kept her employed through 4 years of corporate chaos. She had no idea her life was about to change completely. Neither did Mason. But sometimes the most important moments start small, with a wrong number, a brave little girl, and a broken man finally ready to learn what actually matters. The story was just beginning. 3 weeks after Emma Carter saved Whitmore Technologies from bankruptcy, Mason found himself standing in the toy aisle of a Target at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, completely lost. Can I help you find something? A teenage employee appeared at his elbow, looking concerned. Mason gestured helplessly at the wall of puzzles in front of him. I need a puzzle for a 6-year-old, but not a baby puzzle. She's really smart, like scary smart. Is she your daughter? No, she's... What was Emma exactly? The kid who saved his company? His employee's daughter? A 6-year-old who somehow understood financial spreadsheets better than his accounting department? A friend. The employee pulled down a 500-piece puzzle showing the solar system. This one's pretty advanced. Most kids her age are still doing 100-piece max. Mason took it, then grabbed 3 more, and a chemistry set, and a book about famous mathematicians. By the time he got to the checkout, his cart looked like he was preparing for a very nerdy birthday party. The cashier rang everything up without comment, but her expression said she'd seen weirder things on the night shift. Mason's phone buzzed as he loaded bags into his car. Marcus, board meeting moved to Thursday. They want answers about the audit. He typed back one-handed. They'll get them. What the board would actually get was a 47-page report documenting every financial error in the company's systems over the past 18 months, a complete overhaul of their accounting protocols, and Mason's personal recommendation that they stop using the cheapest software vendor just because it saved money. But he'd worry about that Thursday. Tonight, he had puzzles to deliver. Olivia lived in a neighborhood Mason had driven past 1,000 times, but never actually seen. The kind of place where the apartment buildings all looked the same, where cars were parked on lawns because there weren't enough spots, where children's bikes lay abandoned in doorways. Not dangerous, just tired. Worn down by people working too hard for too little. He found her unit on the 2nd floor of a building that needed new paint about 5 years ago. The number 247 hung crooked on the door, the 7 threatening to fall off completely. Mason knocked, suddenly aware of how ridiculous this was. He was a billionaire CEO showing up unannounced at his employee's apartment with a trunk full of toys. This was weird. This was definitely weird. The door opened. Olivia stood there in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt advertising a 5K run from 2019, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. She looked younger without the office clothes, and completely confused. Mr. Whitmore, is everything okay? I bought puzzles, Mason said, then realized how that sounded. For Emma. I mentioned puzzles last week, and I was at the store anyway, and I thought... He stopped, started over. Can I come in? This is less weird if I'm not standing in your doorway. Olivia stepped back, looking torn between hospitality and concern. Of course, we weren't expecting company. The place is kind of a mess. The apartment was about 600 square feet, most of it taken up by a combination living room and kitchen. A small hallway led to what Mason assumed were 2 bedrooms. The furniture was old but clean, the kind of stuff you got from Goodwill and tried to make presentable. Pictures covered every available wall space. Emma at various ages, Olivia smiling in a graduation gown, a few landscapes that looked hand-painted. It wasn't a mess. It was just small. The kind of small that happened when you were raising a kid on an office assistant salary. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor in pajamas covered with equations, working on what appeared to be a multiplication worksheet. She looked up when Mason entered, her eyes going wide. "Mr. Whitmore." She scrambled to her feet. "Did something else break at the company?" "No, no." Mason set down the bags of toys. "Everything's fine. I just wanted to bring you something, to say thank you properly." Emma approached the bags like they might contain snakes. "What is it?" "Why don't you look?" She pulled out the solar system puzzle first. Her gasp was audible. "Mommy, look! It has all the planets and their moons and everything." "I see that, baby." Olivia shot Mason a look that clearly said this is too much. But Emma was already pulling out the other puzzles, the chemistry set, the math book. "These are for me. All of them? If you want them." Emma looked up at her mother, seeking permission. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "You can keep them. But what do you say?" "Thank you." Emma threw her arms around Mason's legs in a fierce hug that nearly knocked him over. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Mason stood very still, unsure what to do with his hands. When was the last time someone had hugged him like that? Jamie did sometimes, but Jamie was his son. That was different. This was a kid who barely knew him, hugging him like he'd just given her the world. Maybe he had. "You're welcome," he managed. Emma released him and immediately began organizing her new treasures on the floor, sorting them by type, with the same methodical precision she'd probably used on that financial spreadsheet. Olivia pulled Mason aside, lowering her voice. "This is incredibly generous, but you really didn't need to." "I wanted to." Mason watched Emma examine the chemistry set like it contained the secrets of the universe. "My son Jamie has every toy you can imagine, and he barely plays with half of them. Meanwhile, Emma saves my company and probably goes home to—" He gestured at the sparse room, then realized how that sounded. "I'm not trying to be insulting." "You're not wrong." Olivia crossed her arms, but her expression was more resigned than defensive. "I do my best, but there's only so much I can stretch a paycheck. Emma doesn't complain, but I know she notices when other kids have things she doesn't. Can I ask you something, and you can tell me to mind my own business?" "Okay." "Emma's father. Does he help at all?" Olivia laughed, but it had no humor in it. "I haven't seen him since I told him I was pregnant. He left that night. I got a text 2 days later saying he wasn't ready to be a dad and I should handle it. That was 7 years ago." "Jesus." "Yeah." She watched Emma, who was now reading the back of the chemistry set box with complete focus. "But honestly, I'm glad he left. I'd rather do this alone than have her grow up watching him resent her existence. She deserves better than that. She deserves better than a lot of things." Mason said it without thinking, then worried it came out wrong. "I mean, I know what you mean." Olivia's voice was soft. "And you're right, but we're doing okay. We have each other, we have a roof over our heads, we have enough to eat. That's more than some people have." Mason thought about his house. 7 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a pool he never used, a chef's kitchen where he microwaved frozen dinners for Jamie because he didn't know how to cook. All that space, all that money, and he was still lonely. "Mr. Whitmore," Emma called from the floor. "Can you help me with something?" "Sure, kid. What do you need?" She held up the solar system puzzle. "The box says it's for ages 12 and up, but I'm only 6. Do you think I can still do it?" Mason crouched down next to her. "You spotted a decimal point error that 3 accounting firms missed. I think you can handle a puzzle." "But what if I can't?" "Then you ask for help. That's what smart people do when they're stuck." Emma considered this. "Okay, will you help me start it?" Mason checked his watch. It was nearly 11 p.m. He should go home. Jamie was asleep by now, and he had an early meeting tomorrow. And this was already weird enough without him sitting on the floor of his employee's apartment doing puzzles with her daughter. "I'd love to," he said. They spread out the puzzle pieces on the coffee table. Olivia disappeared into the kitchen and came back with tea, the cheap kind from the grocery store, served in mugs that didn't match. She handed one to Mason without asking if he wanted it. He took it. It was terrible. He drank it anyway. "The edge pieces always go first," Emma explained, sorting through the pile with practiced efficiency. "Then you separate by color, see? All the dark blue pieces are space, and the light blue ones are Neptune, and the orange ones are Mars." Mason found himself getting absorbed in the task. There was something soothing about it. No board meetings, no financial projections, no life or death decisions, just finding pieces that fit together. "You're good at this," Emma said after they'd completed the border. "I used to do puzzles with my dad when I was your age. He said it taught patience." Did it work? Mason thought about all the impulsive decisions he'd made over the past 2 years. The expansion, the debt, the doubling down when he should have cut his losses. "Not as well as it should have," Emma giggled. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. The only sounds the clicking of puzzle pieces and the ambient noise from neighboring apartments. A baby crying somewhere. A couple arguing. A dog barking. Olivia sat on the couch with her own tea, watching them with an expression Mason couldn't quite read. "Your son," she said eventually. "Jamie. Does he like puzzles?" "He likes destroying puzzles." Mason fit a piece of Mars into place. "Last week I spent 2 hours on a dinosaur puzzle. Really got into it, you know? Had the whole thing almost done. Came back from the bathroom and Jamie had mixed all the pieces back together because he wanted to start over." Emma looked horrified. "Why would he do that?" "Because he's 5 and chaos is fun at that age." "Can I meet him sometime?" The question caught Mason off guard. "You want to meet Jamie?" "Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot of friends at school. They think I'm weird because I like math, but maybe Jamie wouldn't think I'm weird." "Jamie definitely won't think you're weird. Jamie thinks everyone is fascinating." Mason glanced at Olivia. "Would that be okay? Maybe Emma could come over one afternoon. I have a whole playroom full of toys that nobody uses." "I don't want to impose," Olivia started. "You're not imposing. I'm asking." He found another puzzle piece, turned it over in his hands. "Honestly, I think it would be good for Jamie. He doesn't really have friends either. Just the other kids at his expensive preschool who are all being raised by nannies and learning Mandarin before they can tie their shoes." "That sounds lonely." "It is." Mason hadn't meant to say that out loud, but it was true. His mom died when he was 2. He barely remembers her. And I've been so focused on the company that I haven't been the father he needs. He spends more time with babysitters than with me. "At least you're trying." Olivia's voice was gentle. "That's more than some people do." They worked on the puzzle until midnight, making decent progress on Jupiter and its moons. Emma's eyes started drooping around 11:30, but she fought sleep with the determination of someone who didn't want the moment to end. Finally, Olivia stood up. "Okay, baby, time for bed. Mr. Whitmore needs to go home, and you have school tomorrow." 5 more minutes? Not a negotiation. Emma pouted but obeyed, carefully gathering up all the loose puzzle pieces and putting them back in the box. "Thank you for helping me, Mr. Whitmore, and thank you for the presents." "You're welcome, Emma. Any time." She hugged him again before heading to her bedroom, and Mason felt that same strange tightness in his chest. Olivia walked him to the door. "I'm sorry we kept you so late." "Don't be. I had fun." Mason realized he meant it. When was the last time I just sat and did something for no reason except that it was enjoyable? I can't even remember. "Well, you're welcome to come back and finish the puzzle any time. Fair warning, though, Emma won't forget you offered to let her meet Jamie." "Good. I won't forget either." He stepped into the hallway, then turned back. "Olivia, can I ask you one more thing?" "Sure. How do you do it? Raise a kid alone, work full-time, and still manage to be so present? So patient? I have more money and more resources, and I feel like I'm failing Jamie every single day." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "You want the honest answer?" "Yeah. I'm terrified all the time. Every single decision I make, I'm wondering if I'm screwing her up. Wondering if I'm doing enough, if I'm doing too much, if I'm pushing her too hard or not hard enough. I lie awake at night thinking about how I can't afford the tutors other kids have, or the enrichment programs, or the nice clothes. I'm just making it up as I go and praying it works out. But you make it look easy. That's because you only see the good parts. You don't see the nights when Emma's crying because some kid called her weird and I don't know what to say to make it better. You don't see me working 2 jobs and still coming up short on rent. You don't see the fear." She smiled sadly. "But I guess that's parenting, right? We're all just pretending we know what we're doing." Mason thought about that all the way home. His house was dark when he arrived, except for the single light the nanny always left on in the kitchen. He found a note on the counter. "Jamie had a good day. Ate all his dinner. Asking when you'll be home for bedtime. Sarah." Guilt twisted in his stomach. He climbed the stairs to Jamie's room and pushed open the door carefully. His son was asleep, curled up with a stuffed giraffe that had been his mother's gift on his second birthday. In sleep, Jamie looked so much like Rebecca that it physically hurt. Mason sat on the edge of the bed, brushing hair back from Jamie's forehead. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I keep missing bedtime. I'm sorry I'm not better at this. I'm trying, buddy. I swear I'm trying." Jamie stirred but didn't wake. Mason stayed there for a long time, watching his son sleep and wondering how to be the kind of father Jamie deserved instead of the kind he was. The next few weeks fell into an unexpected pattern. Mason started leaving work earlier, not early by normal standards, but early for him. 6 p.m. instead of 9 or 10. He'd have dinner with Jamie, read him stories, tuck him in properly instead of leaving it to the nanny. And twice a week he found himself at Olivia's apartment, helping Emma with her puzzle collection that had grown substantially. Mason kept bringing new ones, unable to help himself. Emma never asked for them, but the way her face lit up made it impossible to stop. "You're spoiling her," Olivia said one evening, watching Emma dive into a 1,000-piece map of the world. "Is that a problem?" "I don't know yet. Ask me in 10 years when she expects everyone to bring her presents." But she was smiling when she said it. The thing was, Mason wasn't just bringing gifts for Emma. He was bringing himself. The part of himself that had been buried under stress and grief and failure for so long he'd forgotten it existed. The part that could sit on a worn carpet in a tiny apartment and feel more at home than he did in his mansion. Jamie came to the next puzzle session. Mason had been nervous about it, worried that his son wouldn't connect with Emma, or that Emma would find Jamie too immature, or that the whole thing would be awkward. He should have known better. Within 5 minutes, Jamie and Emma were racing to complete sections of a dinosaur puzzle, laughing when they tried to force pieces that didn't fit. No, that's a Stegosaurus plate," Emma giggled. "You're trying to put it on the T-Rex." "But it's the same color," Jamie protested. "Color doesn't matter. You have to look at the shape." Mason and Olivia sat on the couch, watching the chaos unfold. "They're good together," Olivia observed. "Yeah." Mason felt something unknot in his chest. Jamie hasn't laughed like that in months. Emma either. She's usually so serious. It's nice to see her just be a kid. They watched the children argue good-naturedly about puzzle strategy for a while longer. "Can I tell you something weird?" Mason said. "Go ahead." 3 months ago, I was about to lose everything. The company, the legacy, my father's dream, all of it. And I was miserable. Completely, utterly miserable. Now the company's still struggling. I'm working harder than ever to fix the mess I made, and somehow I'm... He searched for the word. "Happier. How does that make sense?" Olivia turned to look at him. "Maybe because you're not alone anymore?" "I was never alone. I have employees, board members, my sister. That's not what I mean." She gestured at the kids. "When's the last time you just existed with someone? No agenda, no business deal, no networking, just being." Mason thought about it. Before Rebecca died, probably. We used to have these Sunday mornings where we'd just stay in bed and talk for hours. About nothing important. Just talking. The memory hurt, but it was a good hurt. The kind that meant something real had existed. I haven't had that since. Well, Olivia's voice was soft. Maybe it's time to start again. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Something neither of them was quite ready to name. Jamie interrupted by announcing he was hungry, and the moment broke. They ordered pizza, cheap pizza from the place down the street, not the artisanal kind Mason usually got delivered to the mansion. It was greasy and delicious, and the kids ate it sitting on the floor while arguing about whether pterodactyls were technically dinosaurs. Mason found himself telling stories about the company's early days, back when his father was still alive and building manufacturing plants was an adventure instead of a burden. Olivia told stories about growing up in a small town in Ohio, dreaming of bigger things. "What did you want to be?" Mason asked. "When you were Emma's age?" "A teacher. Specifically, a math teacher." Olivia smiled at the memory. "I loved helping other kids figure out problems. There was something magical about watching someone's face when they finally understood." "What happened?" "Life happened. Got pregnant at 22, dropped out of college, needed to work instead of study. The usual story." She didn't sound bitter about it, just resigned. "I still think about finishing my degree sometimes, But between work and Emma and just surviving, there's never enough time or money. You could do it now. Olivia laughed. With what money? Student loans? I'm already drowning in debt from the hospital bills when Emma was born. Mason opened his mouth to offer help, then stopped. That wasn't what she needed. She needed someone to listen, not to solve her problems with money. So instead he said, "Tell me about your favorite math concept." Olivia blinked. What? You said you loved math. What's your favorite part? You really want to know? I really want to know. So Olivia told him about number theory, about patterns and sequences, about how mathematics was really just the language of the universe trying to explain itself. She got animated when she talked about it, her hands moving to illustrate concepts, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Mason watched her and thought she was beautiful. Not beautiful in the way the socialites at charity galas were beautiful, all polish and perfection and calculated charm. Beautiful in the way real things were beautiful, messy and authentic and alive. Dangerous thought. He pushed it away. When he finally left that night, Jamie asleep in his arms and Emma's goodbye hug still warm on his legs, Mason sat in his car for a long moment before starting the engine. This was getting complicated. He was getting attached to Emma, who was brilliant and sweet and deserved every opportunity in the world. He was getting attached to watching his son actually be happy instead of politely obedient. And he was definitely getting attached to Olivia, who made him feel like maybe he wasn't completely broken. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Board wants to meet about the restructuring plan. They're getting impatient. Mason typed back. They can wait until Thursday. Then he drove home through the quiet streets, his son breathing softly in the back seat, and tried not to think about how much he wanted to turn around and go back. Thursday's board meeting was exactly as terrible as Mason expected. You're telling us we nearly filed for bankruptcy because of a decimal point error that a child found? The chairman, Richard Desmond, looked like he'd bitten into something sour. How is that possible? Because our financial systems were poorly integrated, our oversight was inadequate, and we were all too focused on crisis management to catch a fundamental data entry error, Mason said flatly. The full audit report details exactly how it happened and what we're doing to prevent it from happening again. And what about liability? Who's responsible? I am. Mason met Richard's eyes. I'm the CEO. Everything that happens in this company ultimately comes back to me. If you want someone to blame, blame me. That's very noble, Mason, but nothing. I approved the software migration. I signed off on the accounting procedures. I was so busy trying to save the company that I stopped paying attention to the basics. This is my mistake, and I'm fixing it. Another board member, Patricia Chen, leaned forward. What about the employee who discovered the error? I heard she's not even in the finance department. She's not an employee. She's 6 years old. The room went silent. You're joking, Richard said. I'm not. Emma Carter, daughter of one of our office assistants, happened to see a financial spreadsheet and noticed the error. She walked into a bankruptcy meeting and pointed it out. A 6-year-old. A very smart 6-year-old. Mason pulled up a photo on his tablet and turned it around so the board could see Emma grinning next to her completed solar system puzzle. This is her. And before anyone asks, yes, I verified her discovery thoroughly. The audit confirmed she was correct. Patricia was smiling now. That's actually a great story. We should use it in PR. Whitmore Technologies, where even our youngest consultants make a difference. Absolutely not. Mason's voice was sharp. Emma is a child, not a publicity stunt. Her mother didn't bring her to work that day to make headlines. She brought her because she couldn't afford childcare. That's the real story here, that we have employees struggling to survive while we sit in this boardroom arguing about liability. Richard frowned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we take a hard look at our compensation structure. I'm suggesting we implement better benefits, better support for working parents, better health care. I'm suggesting we remember that this company exists because of the people who work here, not in spite of them. That's going to cost money. Money we have, now that we're not going bankrupt. Mason closed his tablet. The restructuring plan is in your packets. I'm cutting executive bonuses, including my own, and redirecting that money into employee programs. If anyone has a problem with that, you know where the door is. The meeting continued for another hour, but Mason's mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about Olivia's apartment, about Emma's patched jeans and broken backpack zipper. About the pride in Olivia's voice when she said they were doing okay, even though they clearly weren't. About how he had 7 bedrooms and she had 2. After the meeting, Marcus cornered him in the hallway. That was quite a speech. Was it wrong? No, but it was risky. The board doesn't like being lectured about morality by someone who nearly bankrupted the company. Then maybe they need to be lectured more often. Mason loosened his tie. Did you implement the changes I asked for? The compensation review? Yes. HR is analyzing every position, comparing our pay to industry standards, and flagging anyone who's significantly underpaid. And Olivia Carter? Marcus smiled. Already done. She's being promoted to records manager with a 40% raise, effective immediately. I also set up the college fund for Emma like you asked, fully funded through a bachelor's degree with additional money for graduate school if she wants it. Good. Make sure Olivia knows it's merit-based, not charity. Is it merit-based? Mason thought about that. She's been here 4 years and never missed a day. She organizes files better than anyone in the department. She raised a kid brilliant enough to catch a mistake trained accountants missed. Yeah, Marcus. It's merit-based. If you say so. Marcus started to walk away, then paused. Mason, be careful. Careful of what? You know what. Mason did know. He was getting too close, too involved, too attached. This was his employee and her daughter, not his family. There were lines you didn't cross, boundaries you didn't blur. But when he got the call from HR that afternoon saying Olivia had broken down crying when they told her about the promotion and the college fund, those boundaries felt increasingly irrelevant. That evening, instead of going home, he drove to Olivia's apartment. She answered the door with tears still on her face. You didn't have to do this, she said. I didn't do anything. You earned it. Mason. It was the first time she'd used his first name. This changes everything. Emma can actually go to college now. A good college. She can study whatever she wants without worrying about money. Do you understand what that means? I understand what it should mean, that every kid gets that chance, not just the ones whose mothers happen to work at companies run by guilty billionaires. Olivia laughed through her tears. Is that what you are? A guilty billionaire? Among other things. She pulled him inside, and they stood in her tiny living room while Emma practiced multiplication tables at the kitchen table, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding 10 feet away. Thank you, Olivia said softly, for seeing us, for treating Emma like she matters, for... She trailed off. For what? For being different than I expected. Mason wanted to kiss her. The urge was sudden and overwhelming and completely inappropriate. She was his employee. This was a professional relationship, and he'd already crossed too many lines by being here at all. Instead, he took a step back. I should go. I just wanted to make sure you knew about the promotion. Disappointment flickered across Olivia's face, so quick he almost missed it. Of course. Thank you again. He left quickly, before he could do something stupid. But as he drove home, Mason knew the truth. It was already too late. He was falling for Olivia Carter, and there was nothing professional about it at all. Mason managed to avoid Olivia for exactly 3 days before Jamie ruined everything. Dad, when can we see Emma again? His son asked over breakfast on Sunday morning. You promised we could do more puzzles. Mason poured cereal with more concentration than the task required. Soon, buddy. But when is soon? When I have time. Jamie's face crumpled in that way that meant tears were coming. You never have time. You always say soon and then you forget. The accusation hit harder because it was true. How many times had Mason promised things and then disappeared into work until Jamie stopped asking? You're right, Mason said, setting down the cereal box. I'm sorry. How about today? Really? Really? Go get dressed. Which is how Mason found himself standing outside Olivia's apartment at 10 in the morning on a Sunday, holding a box of donuts he'd grabbed from the bakery down the street, trying to convince himself this was about the kids and nothing else. Olivia answered the door in pajama pants and a tank top, her hair a mess, no makeup. She looked exhausted and beautiful and completely unprepared for visitors. Mason, what are you... It's Sunday. I know. Jamie wanted to see Emma. I should have called first. He held up the donuts like a peace offering. I brought breakfast? She stared at him for a long moment, and Mason couldn't read her expression. Then she stepped back to let them in. Emma's still asleep. She had nightmares last night and didn't settle down until 4 a.m. We can come back. No, it's fine. Come in. Just keep your voice down. The apartment was quiet in a way it never was during their evening visits. Dishes in the sink from last night's dinner. Emma's homework scattered across the coffee table. A basket of laundry waiting to be folded. The intimate debris of real life. Jamie immediately went to the puzzle they'd been working on last time, carefully laid out on a corner of the floor. Mason and Olivia stood in the kitchen, the silence awkward in a way it had never been before. Coffee? She offered. Please. She poured 2 cups from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there since yesterday. Mason drank it anyway. About the promotion, Olivia said, not looking at him. I've been trying to call you all week to say thank you properly, but you haven't been answering. I've been busy. Right, busy. She set down her mug harder than necessary. Look, if this is weird now because of the money or the position or whatever, just say so. I can handle weird. I can't handle being avoided. Mason rubbed his face. It's not weird because of the promotion. Then what? He couldn't say it. Couldn't tell her that he'd been avoiding her because every time he saw her, he wanted things he had no right to want. That he lay awake thinking about the way she laughed at Emma's jokes, the way she defended her daughter like a lioness, the way she looked at him like he was just a person instead of a billionaire or a CEO or a Whitmore. I don't know how to do this, he said instead. Do what? This. Whatever this is, I don't know the rules. Olivia leaned against the counter, studying him. What do you think this is? I think... Mason stopped, started over. I think I haven't had a real friend in years. I think you and Emma make me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just functional. I think I'm terrified of screwing this up the way I screw up everything else. You're not screwing anything up. Yet. I'm not screwing anything up yet. A small voice interrupted from the hallway. Mr. Whitmore? Emma stood there in princess pajamas, rubbing her eyes. You came back. Hey, kid. Sorry if we woke you. You didn't. I was already awake. She padded into the living room and immediately noticed Jamie working on the puzzle. Jamie, you came too! The 2 children collided in a hug that made Mason's chest ache. Olivia caught his eye and smiled, and just like that, the awkwardness dissolved. They spent the morning doing puzzles and eating donuts and arguing about whether plesiosaurs were dinosaurs or just prehistoric reptiles. Emma insisted on looking it up in one of her new books, which led to a 20-minute tangent about marine biology. Around noon, Olivia's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed. I need to take this. Emma, baby, can you and Jamie play in your room for a bit? The kids went willingly, already planning some elaborate game involving stuffed animals and space exploration. Olivia answered the phone. Hi, Mom. No, it's fine. I wasn't... What? When did this happen? Mason pretended to be very interested in cleaning up donut crumbs while trying not to eavesdrop. He failed at the second part. I understand that, but I can't just... Mom, I have a job. I have responsibilities here. I can't drop everything and drive to Ohio because Dad's being stubborn about seeing a doctor. Silence while she listened. That's not fair, and you know it. Just because I'm the daughter doesn't mean... She closed her eyes. Fine. Fine. I'll see what I can do, but I can't promise anything. She hung up and stood very still for a moment. Everything okay? Mason asked. My dad's sick. Has been for a while, apparently, but he didn't want to tell anyone because he's convinced doctors are all quacks. Now it's gotten bad enough that my mom's panicking and calling me to come fix it. She laughed without humor, as if I could fix anything from 6 hours away. Do you need to go? I can't. I just started this new position, and I can't afford to take time off, and Emma has school, and... She stopped. Sorry, not your problem. What if it didn't have to be a problem at all? Olivia looked at him warily. What do you mean? What if you took a few days off to go see your dad, and Emma stayed here with Jamie and me? Absolutely not. Why not? Because you're my boss, Mason. I can't just dump my kid on you and disappear for a week. First of all, I'm offering. Second, it wouldn't be dumping. Emma and Jamie get along great. Third, when's the last time you had any time to yourself to deal with family stuff? That's not the point. Then what is the point? Olivia crossed her arms. The point is I don't take charity. It's not charity. It's friends helping friends. You'd do the same for me. Would I? Because I don't have a mansion with 7 bedrooms and a staff to help me out. The bitterness in her voice surprised him. Is that what you think this is about? Me throwing money around to feel better about myself? Isn't it? Mason felt anger flash through him, hot and unexpected. You know what? Screw you. I'm trying to help because I care about you and Emma, not because I'm looking for ways to spend my trust fund. But if you'd rather struggle alone because you're too proud to accept help from someone who actually wants to give it, fine. That's your choice. They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with tension. Then Olivia's expression crumbled. I'm sorry. That wasn't fair. She sat down heavily on the couch. I'm just so tired of needing help, of always being the one who can't quite manage on her own. Do you know what that feels like? To constantly be grateful, constantly be owing someone something? Mason sat down next to her, careful to leave space between them. I was 2 months away from bankruptcy. Emma saved me. If we're keeping score, I'm pretty sure I owe you more than you owe me. That's different. How? Because Emma didn't save you because she wanted something in return. She did it because she was scared I'd lose my job. That's not the same as you swooping in with money and solutions to all my problems. I'm not trying to solve all your problems. I'm trying to solve one specific problem. Your dad's sick, you need to see him, and I can watch Emma for a few days. That's it. No strings, no debt, no scorekeeping. Olivia was quiet for a long time. From Emma's room came the sound of the kids laughing about something. Why are you really doing this? She asked finally. Mason considered lying, considered giving her some easy answer about corporate responsibility or employee benefits or wanting to give back. Instead, he told the truth. Because 3 months ago, I was sitting in a conference room about to sign away everything my family built, and I didn't even care. I was empty, just going through the motions because that's what you do when you're supposed to be strong and in control and handling everything. Then your daughter walked in and everything changed, not just the company, me. I changed, and I don't want to go back to who I was before. Mason, I'm not finished. You asked why I'm doing this, and the answer is selfish. I'm doing it because spending time with you and Emma makes me feel like a person again, instead of just a role I'm playing. I'm doing it because Jamie smiles more when Emma's around than he has in the 3 years since his mother died. I'm doing it because for the first time in forever, I wake up and want to do something besides just survive the day. Olivia's eyes were wet. That's not selfish, isn't it? You need help and I'm making it about what I get out of it. No, you're being honest about why you care. That's different. She wiped her eyes. Okay. Okay? Okay, I'll go see my dad, but only for a few days and only if Emma's comfortable with it and only if you promise to call me if anything goes wrong. Deal. They shook on it, and Mason tried to ignore how right her hand felt in his. Emma was not immediately comfortable with the idea. You're leaving? She looked between her mother and Mason with wide, worried eyes. For how long? Just a few days, baby. Grandpa's not feeling well, and I need to go help Grandma take care of him. But what about me? You're going to stay with Mr. Whitmore and Jamie. Won't that be fun? You can do puzzles and play games, and I want to go with you. Olivia knelt down to Emma's level. I know, sweetie, but you have school, and it's a really long drive, and Grandpa needs quiet right now. You'd be bored. I don't care. I don't want you to leave. Mason watched Olivia's face cycle through guilt and frustration and helplessness. He knew that feeling. The impossible balance of being a single parent, trying to be everything to everyone and failing constantly. Emma, he said gently, can I tell you something? She nodded, not looking at him. When my wife died, Jamie was only 2 years old, too young to really understand what happened. But he knew his mom was gone, and he was scared all the time that I'd leave too. Every time I went to work, he'd cry. Every time I left his room at night, he'd panic. It took a long time for him to trust that I'd always come back. Did he stop being scared? Mostly. He still has bad nights sometimes, but he learned that even when I have to leave, I always come back. Your mom's the same way. She has to go help your grandpa, but she'll come back. She always comes back. Emma considered this. Promise? I promise. Okay. Emma turned to her mother. But you have to call me every night. Every single night, Olivia agreed. And you have to be good for Mr. Whitmore. I'm always good. You're always smart. Good is different. Emma giggled, despite herself. Olivia left that evening, her car packed with a hastily assembled overnight bag, her eyes red from crying in the bathroom where Emma couldn't see. Mason stood in the doorway with both kids, waving as she drove away. Is Mommy going to be okay? Emma asked, so quietly he almost didn't hear. Yeah, kid, she's going to be fine. How do you know? Because she's strong, just like you. Emma slipped her small hand into his, and Mason felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a blanket. He had 2 6-year-olds, one of whom wasn't even his own child, and absolutely no idea what he was doing. This should be interesting. The first night was chaos. Emma refused to sleep in the guest room because it was too big and too quiet. Jamie refused to sleep in his own room because Emma was scared and he wanted to keep her company. They ended up in a pillow fort in the living room, both kids wide awake at 11 p.m., whispering and giggling. Mason sat on the couch nearby, answering emails on his phone and trying to pretend he had any control over the situation. Mr. Whitmore? Emma's voice floated out from the fort. Yeah? Do you miss Jamie's mom? Mason's fingers froze over his keyboard. Every day. What was she like? She was... How did you explain someone to a child who never knew them? She was kind and funny. She laughed really loud at movies, even the parts that weren't supposed to be funny. She couldn't cook to save her life, but she tried anyway. She loved Jamie more than anything in the world. Is that why you're sad sometimes? I'm not... Mason stopped. Emma had seen through him from day one. No point lying now. Yeah, that's why. My mommy gets sad sometimes too, when she thinks I'm asleep. I hear her crying in her room. Mason's chest tightened. Does she? Uh-huh. I think she misses my dad, even though she says he was a jerk who left us. Jamie's voice joined in from inside the fort. My dad says jerks aren't worth missing. But what if you can't help it? Emma asked. Then I guess you just feel sad until you don't anymore, Jamie said, with the simple wisdom of someone who'd lived through loss too young. Mason set down his phone and crawled halfway into the pillow fort, earning surprised giggles from both kids. You want to know what I think? He said. What? They chorused. I think it's okay to be sad about people who left, even if they were jerks. Being sad just means you have a big heart with room for lots of feelings, and having a big heart is good, even when it hurts. Emma was quiet for a moment. Mr. Whitmore? Yeah, kid? I'm glad Mommy brought me to work that day. Me too, Emma. Me too. They finally fell asleep around midnight, tangled together in a pile of blankets and stuffed animals. Mason carried them one by one to the guest room. Screw it, they could share, and tucked them in. Then he called Olivia. She answered on the first ring. Is everything okay? Is Emma... Everyone's fine. They're asleep. Just wanted to give you an update. He heard her exhale. Thank you. I've been worried sick. How's your dad? Stubborn? Refusing to admit anything's wrong even though he can barely walk. My mom's at her wit's end. Olivia sounded exhausted. I'm taking him to the doctor tomorrow, whether he likes it or not. Good luck with that. Thanks. I'll need it. A pause. Mason? Yeah? Thank you for doing this. I know I gave you a hard time about it, but thank you. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Not everyone would drop everything to help someone they barely know. I know you better than you think. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Neither of them was ready to examine. I should go, Olivia said finally. My mom's calling me for dinner, but call me if anything happens. Anything at all. I will. Get some rest. You too. Mason hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at his phone. He was in so much trouble. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to normal. Mason worked from home, taking conference calls while the kids did homework at the kitchen table. They ate dinner together every night, sometimes takeout, sometimes the nanny Sarah's cooking when Mason remembered to ask her to come. Emma taught Jamie long division. Jamie taught Emma how to make fart noises with his armpit. They did puzzles and played games and argued about whether superheroes could beat dinosaurs in a fight. And Mason remembered what it felt like to have a family. On the third night, Emma woke up screaming. Mason was in her room before he fully processed what was happening, his heart pounding with adrenaline. She was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, gasping for air. Hey, it's okay. You're okay. Mason sat on the edge of the bed, hands hovering uncertainly. Bad dream? Emma nodded, still crying too hard to speak. Want to talk about it? She shook her head. Okay. That's okay? Mason had no idea what to do. When Jamie had nightmares, he'd just hold him until he calmed down. But Emma wasn't his kid. He didn't know if she'd want that. Emma made the decision for him by launching herself at his chest, wrapping her arms around his neck in a death grip. Mason held her while she cried, one hand rubbing circles on her back the way he did for Jamie. I want my mommy, Emma sobbed into his shoulder. I know, sweetheart. I know. What if she doesn't come back? She'll come back. She promised, remember? But what if something bad happens? What if nothing bad is going to happen? Mason pulled back enough to look at her. Your mom is tough. She's probably the toughest person I know, and she loves you more than anything. She's going to come back. How do you know? Because nothing in the world could keep her away from you. Not distance, not sick grandpas, not anything. Emma hiccuped, wiping her nose on her pajama sleeve. Can I call her? Mason checked his watch. 2 a.m. It's really late, Em. She's probably asleep. Please? He couldn't say no to those eyes. Olivia answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. Mason, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Someone wants to talk to you. He handed the phone to Emma. Mommy? Emma's voice was small and broken. I had a bad dream. Mason couldn't hear Olivia's response, but he watched Emma's face relax as her mother's voice flowed through the phone. Uh-huh. Yeah, Mr. Whitmore said that too. Emma glanced at him. He's being really nice. He makes pancakes wrong, but they still taste good. A pause. Okay. I love you too. Come home soon. She handed the phone back to Mason and burrowed under the covers, looking lighter than she had since Olivia left. Mason put the phone to his ear. Sorry for waking you. Don't be. Olivia's voice was soft. Is she okay? She will be, just scared. I'm coming home tomorrow. Dad's going to be fine. Bronchitis, not anything serious, and Emma needs me. We'll be here. Mason? Olivia hesitated. You said we. What? Just now, you said we'll be here, not she'll be here. Mason hadn't realized. Slip of the tongue. Was it? He didn't answer. Get some sleep, Mason. I'll see you tomorrow. After she hung up, Mason sat with Emma until her breathing evened out into sleep. Then he went back to his own room and lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about helping an employee. It had stopped being about gratitude or guilt or corporate responsibility. He cared about them, really cared. Emma, with her brilliant mind and fierce love for her mother. Olivia with her strength and her pride, and her refusal to be anyone other than exactly who she was. He was falling in love with both of them, and he had no idea what to do about it. Olivia arrived the next afternoon while the kids were at school. Mason had taken the day off, actually off, not working from home, to make sure Emma's transition back went smoothly. He opened the door and there she was, looking tired and rumpled and perfect. Hi, she said. Hi. They stood there for a long moment, neither moving. Thank you, Olivia said finally, for taking care of her, for calling me when she needed me, for... She gestured helplessly. Everything. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Let me thank you, Mason. You've done more for us in 3 months than anyone else has in 7 years. I need to say it. Okay. You're welcome. Another pause. Can I ask you something? Olivia's voice was careful. And you can tell me if I'm reading this completely wrong. Okay. What are we doing here? Mason's heart kicked against his ribs. What do you mean? I mean this. She gestured between them. You and me. The late-night phone calls and the puzzle sessions, and the way you look at me sometimes like... She stopped. Am I imagining it? No. The word came out rougher than he intended. No, I'm not imagining it, or no, you're not. You're not imagining it. Mason stepped closer. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what the rules are, or if there even are rules. I just know that when I'm with you, I feel like myself again, like I'm not just playing a role or trying to live up to some legacy. I'm just Mason, and I haven't been just Mason in a really long time. Olivia's eyes were bright. I'm your employee. I know. This is complicated. I know. People will talk. They'll say I slept my way into the promotion, that you're taking advantage, that we're both crazy. Probably. And you still want whatever this is? Mason reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, letting his hand linger against her cheek. I haven't wanted anything this much in 3 years. Olivia leaned into his touch. I'm terrified. Me too. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? She laughed, and it sounded like hope. When did you become an optimist? When a 6-year-old girl walked into my life and reminded me that sometimes the impossible happens. Olivia closed the distance between them, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home. They broke apart when they heard a car door slam outside. The kids would be back any second. To be continued? Olivia whispered. Definitely to be continued. Emma burst through the door moments later, dropping her backpack and launching herself at her mother with enough force to nearly knock them both over. Mommy, you're back. You came back. Of course I came back, baby. I promised, didn't I? Jamie appeared behind Emma, grinning. Dad made pancakes this morning, and they were gross. They were not gross, Mason protested. They were rustic. They were lumpy. Rustic means lumpy. Olivia laughed, and Mason thought he could listen to that sound for the rest of his life. Later, after the kids were in bed and Olivia was getting ready to leave, she paused at the door. I meant what I said earlier, about being terrified. I know. But I think maybe terrified is okay. Maybe terrified means it matters. Emma said something similar once, about big hearts having room for lots of feelings. She's a smart kid. Wonder who she gets that from. Olivia smiled and kissed him again, soft and sweet and full of possibility. Good night, Mason. Good night, Olivia. He watched her drive away, and for the first time in 3 years, the empty house didn't feel quite so empty. The rumors started 3 weeks after that kiss. Mason first heard them from Marcus, who cornered him in his office with the expression of someone about to deliver bad news. We need to talk about the optics, Marcus said, closing the door. What optics? You and Olivia Carter. People are noticing. Mason set down his pen. Noticing what exactly? That you leave work early now. That you're always on the 3rd floor. That she got promoted right after her daughter saved the company. That you've been seen having coffee together in the break room. Marcus sat down. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying people are talking. Let them talk. Mason, she's your employee. If this is what I think it is, you need to be careful. One accusation of favoritism or impropriety and the board will have your head. I haven't done anything wrong. Haven't you? Marcus leaned forward. You promoted her. You set up a college fund for her daughter. You're spending time with her outside of work. From the outside, it looks exactly like a powerful man taking advantage of a vulnerable employee. That's not what this is. I know that. You know that. But do they? Marcus gestured toward the window, toward the rest of the company. All they see is the billionaire CEO and the single mother who works in records. The power dynamic is impossible to ignore. Mason felt anger rising in his chest. So what are you suggesting? That I stop seeing her because people might talk? That I pretend I don't care about her to protect the company's reputation? I'm suggesting you think this through. Really think it through. Because if this goes south, it's not just your reputation on the line. It's hers too. And Emma's. That stopped Mason cold. He hadn't thought about it from that angle. What would happen to Olivia if this relationship became public and people assumed the worst? What would they say about her? What would they say about Emma? I need to talk to her, Mason said quietly. That's probably a good idea. But talking to Olivia proved harder than expected because she was already dealing with her own version of the rumors. She showed up at his house that evening unannounced, her face tight with barely controlled emotion. We need to talk. Mason opened the door wider. Come in. Where are the kids? Jamie's at a sleepover. I thought Emma was with you. She's at my sister's for the night. Olivia walked past him into the living room, her movements jerky with tension. Someone left a note in my desk today. What kind of note? She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her purse and handed it to him. The message was typed, impersonal, cruel. Sleeping your way to the top? How much does it cost to buy a promotion from Mason Whitmore? Hope your daughter's proud of what her mother does for money. Mason felt rage sweep through him, hot and immediate. Who wrote this? I don't know. It wasn't signed. But it doesn't matter who wrote it, Mason. What matters is people are thinking it. No one who actually knows you would think that. You don't know what people think. Olivia's voice cracked. Do you know what happened today? 3 different people congratulated me on my strategic career move. One woman in accounting actually winked at me and said she wished she'd thought of bringing her kid to work. They think I planned it. They think I used Emma to get close to you. That's insane. Is it? From their perspective, I'm a nobody who suddenly got promoted and started dating the CEO. How else are they supposed to interpret that? They're supposed to see that you earned your position, that you're brilliant and competent, and the promotion had nothing to do with us. But there is an us, Mason. That's the problem. Even if the promotion was legitimate, even if everything happened exactly the way it did, there's still an us now, and that makes everything suspect. Mason wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, but he couldn't, because she wasn't wrong. So what are you saying? He asked carefully. Olivia looked at him with eyes full of pain. I'm saying maybe Marcus was right. Maybe this is too complicated. Maybe we need to stop before it gets worse. You want to end this. I want to protect my daughter. The words burst out of her. Do you understand what it's like to have people whispering about you, judging you? I've dealt with that my whole life. The girl who got pregnant too young, the woman raising a kid alone, the employee who can't quite keep up. I'm used to it. But Emma? She doesn't deserve to hear people say her mother slept her way into a promotion. She doesn't deserve to have her accomplishment turned into something dirty. No one's going to say that to a 6-year-old. They'll say it where she can hear. Kids are cruel, Mason. Their parents are crueler. Olivia wrapped her arms around herself. I just got her into a good school district. She's finally making friends. I can't let this destroy that. Mason felt something breaking inside his chest. So that's it? We just pretend nothing happened? I don't know what else to do. They stood in silence, the space between them feeling like miles instead of feet. I love you, Mason said. Olivia's breath caught. Don't. I love you. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was scared. I'm still scared. But I love you, Olivia, and I love Emma, and I don't want to lose either of you because people are small-minded and cruel. Love isn't enough, Olivia whispered. Not when the whole world is against us. Then we change the world. How? How do we do that, Mason? You can't just throw money at this problem. You can't buy people's respect or make the rumors go away. This is real life, not a fairy tale. I know it's not a fairy tale. I know it's messy and complicated and there's no easy answer, but I also know that walking away because it's hard is the coward's way out. And you're not a coward, Olivia. Neither am I. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I'm so tired of fighting, of always being the underdog, always having to prove myself, always being not quite good enough. Just once. I want something to be easy. Mason crossed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. I can't promise easy, but I can promise worth it. Olivia buried her face in his chest and cried, and Mason held her while his own heart broke a little. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. I need time to think, okay? And I need you to understand that this isn't just about us. It's about Emma and Jamie and what's best for them. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're the billionaire who gets to make grand gestures and declarations of love. If this goes wrong, you'll still be fine. You'll still have your company and your mansion and your life. But me? I'll be the cautionary tale. The woman who reached too high and fell. The words hit him like a physical blow. Is that really what you think of me? I think you mean well. I think you care. But I also think you don't fully understand what you're asking me to risk. She left before he could respond, and Mason stood alone in his living room feeling like he'd been gutted. The next 2 weeks were torture. Olivia avoided him at work, communicating only through email when absolutely necessary. The warmth they'd built over months disappeared overnight, replaced by professional courtesy that felt like ice water. Mason threw himself into work, staying late at the office, taking every meeting, accepting every invitation, anything to avoid going home to an empty house and thinking about what he'd lost. Jamie noticed. Why doesn't Emma come over anymore? His son asked one night at dinner. She's busy with school. But we're always busy with school. That didn't stop her before. Things are different now. Why? Mason had no good answer. They just are. Jamie pushed his food around his plate, not eating. Did you and Miss Olivia have a fight? It's complicated, buddy. That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to explain. Jamie looked at him with eyes too old for his face. I liked having them around. It felt like we were a real family. We are a real family, you and me. I know, but it felt more real with them, like we weren't just pretending to be okay. Mason had no response to that. The breaking point came 3 weeks after Olivia walked out of his house. Mason was in a board meeting when his assistant interrupted, her face pale. I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Whitmore, but there's an emergency. Emma Carter is in the hospital. Mason was out of his chair before she finished speaking. What happened? I don't have details. Olivia called and asked if you could come. She sounded... The assistant's voice wavered. She sounded scared. Mason grabbed his keys and ran. He made the 20-minute drive to the hospital in 12, his heart pounding, his mind cycling through every terrible possibility. Car accident, serious illness, something worse. He found Olivia in the emergency room waiting area, pacing, her hands shaking. What happened? Mason demanded. Where's Emma? They're running tests. Olivia's voice was hollow. She collapsed at school during recess, just fell over. They called an ambulance and I met them here, but they won't tell me anything yet. Did she hit her head? Is she conscious? She's conscious. She's talking. But she's weak and dizzy, and the doctors are worried it might be her heart, or... Olivia's voice broke. I can't lose her, Mason. I can't. Mason pulled her into his arms without thinking, and Olivia collapsed against him. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other while nurses and doctors moved around them. Finally, a doctor appeared. Ms. Carter? That's me. Olivia pulled away from Mason, wiping her eyes. Is she okay? Can I see her? She's stable. We've run preliminary tests, and it appears to be severe dehydration combined with low blood sugar. Has she been eating normally? Olivia's face went white. Yes, I think so. She's been a little off her appetite lately, but I thought it was just stress from school. When you say off her appetite, she's been picking at her food more. I thought maybe she was going through a phase. The guilt in Olivia's voice was crushing. I should have paid more attention. I should have noticed. Kids are good at hiding things, the doctor said gently. But we need to monitor her for the next 24 hours to make sure there are no underlying issues. She's asking for you. Olivia practically ran toward Emma's room, and Mason followed. Emma looked tiny in the hospital bed, an IV in her small arm, her face pale against the white sheets. Mommy, she said when Olivia entered, I'm sorry. Sorry for what, baby? Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, taking Emma's hand carefully. I didn't mean to get sick. I didn't mean to scare you. You have nothing to be sorry for. Olivia was crying again. Nothing at all. You're going to be fine. Emma's eyes found Mason standing in the doorway. Mr. Whitmore came too. Yeah, kid. Of course I came. Are you and Mommy still fighting? The question hung in the air. Mason looked at Olivia, who was staring at Emma with surprise. You knew we were fighting? Olivia asked. You stopped smiling. And you cry more now. I can hear you at night. Emma's voice was matter of fact. Is it because of me? Because I got you in trouble at work? Oh, baby, no. Olivia smoothed Emma's hair back. This has nothing to do with you. Then why are you fighting? Because grown-ups are stupid sometimes, Mason said before he could stop himself. We get scared and make bad decisions and forget what actually matters. Emma looked at him seriously. What actually matters? You. Your mom. Jamie, family. The people we love. He moved closer to the bed. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm sorry we made you worry about grown-up stuff when you should just be worrying about school and puzzles and whether dinosaurs could beat superheroes. Dinosaurs would definitely win, Emma said. They're bigger. There you go. That's what you should be thinking about. A small smile crossed Emma's face. I missed you. I missed you too, kid. The doctor came back an hour later with more test results. Everything looked normal, just dehydration and stress. They'd keep Emma overnight for observation, but she'd probably be released in the morning. Olivia refused to leave Emma's side, so Mason went to get them both food from the cafeteria. When he came back, Emma was asleep and Olivia was sitting in the chair next to the bed, staring at nothing. "Coffee," Mason said, handing her a cup. "And a sandwich you probably won't eat but should try." "Thanks." Olivia took the coffee but ignored the sandwich. "You don't have to stay." "I'm staying." "Mason, I'm not leaving, Olivia. Not the hospital and not you. So you can either accept that I'm here or we can argue about it. But either way, I'm not going anywhere." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "I've been thinking." "About?" "About what Emma said. About us fighting. About how she could tell something was wrong even when I thought I was hiding it." She set down the coffee cup. "I spent 3 weeks trying to protect her from gossip and rumors. And the whole time, I was making her miserable by pushing away the people who made her happy." "You were trying to do the right thing." "Was I? Or was I just scared?" Olivia looked at him. "You said I wasn't a coward, but maybe you were wrong." "Maybe I am. You're the bravest person I know." "I ran away from you because people were talking. That's not brave. That's—" She gestured helplessly. "I don't even know what that is. Stupid, prideful, self-destructive." "Human," Mason said. "It's human. You were scared and trying to protect Emma. There's nothing cowardly about that. But I wasn't protecting her. I was protecting myself from getting hurt, from being disappointed, from hoping for something good and having it fall apart." Olivia's voice cracked. "Emma's been through enough. She deserves stability. She deserves to know that the people in her life aren't going to just disappear when things get hard. Then let me be one of those people. Let me stay." "What about the rumors? What about the board and the company and all the reasons this is complicated?" "Screw the rumors, screw the board. I'll make it work." Mason knelt down next to her chair. "I love you, Olivia. I love Emma. And I'm not walking away just because it's messy. Life is messy. Love is messy. And I'd rather have messy with you than perfect with anyone else." Olivia touched his face, her hand gentle. "I love you too. I've been trying not to, but I do." "Then stop trying. Just love me. Let me love you back. We'll figure out the rest as we go." "What if we can't figure it out? Then we'll fail together. But at least we'll fail trying instead of wondering what if." Olivia kissed him, soft and sweet, and tasting like tears and coffee and hope. Emma stirred in the bed, her eyes fluttering open. "Are you kissing? That's gross." They broke apart, both laughing. "Go back to sleep, baby," Olivia said. "Are you not fighting anymore?" "We're not fighting anymore." "Good." Emma closed her eyes again. "Mr. Whitmore makes you happy. I like it when you're happy." After Emma fell back asleep, Mason and Olivia sat together in the uncomfortable hospital chairs, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "We're going to have to deal with this eventually," Olivia said. "The rumors, the company politics, all of it." "I know. I'm going to need you to actually have a plan, not just grand gestures and declarations." "I'm working on it." "Are you?" Mason pulled out his phone and showed her a draft email he'd been writing for 2 weeks. It was addressed to the board and the entire company. In it, he disclosed his relationship with Olivia, acknowledged the promotion timing, and offered to submit to an independent review of all personnel decisions he'd made since taking over as CEO. He outlined new policies for workplace relationships, transparency requirements, and conflict of interest protocols. "I was going to send it 3 days after you left," he said, "but I wanted to talk to you first. Make sure you were okay with going public." Olivia read through the email twice. "This is going to cause problems." "Probably. The board might fire you." "Let them try." "You'd really risk the company for this? For us?" Mason thought about that. 6 months ago, the company had been everything, his whole identity wrapped up in being a Whitmore, and carrying on the legacy, and proving he was worthy of his father's trust. But things had changed. He'd changed. "The company matters," he said slowly, "but it's not everything. It's not even close to everything. And if I have to choose between the business and the people I love, I'll choose people every single time." Olivia's eyes filled with fresh tears. "When did you get so wise?" "When a 6-year-old girl taught me that some things are more important than decimal points and profit margins." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma sleep, listening to the steady beep of monitors. Send the email, Olivia said finally. You sure? No, I'm terrified, but do it anyway. Mason hit send before he could second-guess the decision. The response was immediate and explosive. By morning, his phone had 47 missed calls, 63 emails, and a text from Marcus that just said, "What the hell did you do?" The board called an emergency meeting for that afternoon. Mason showed up with Olivia beside him, both of them dressed professionally, both of them ready for whatever came next. The boardroom was packed, every board member present, along with several executives, the head of HR, and the company's legal counsel. Richard Desmond looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Mason, what were you thinking? I was thinking transparency is better than secrets. You're the CEO. You can't just date employees and expect no one to question it. I'm not expecting no one to question it. I'm expecting them to look at the facts, see that Olivia's promotion was merit-based and well-documented, and trust that I'm capable of separating personal relationships from professional decisions. That's not how the world works. Then maybe the world needs to change. Patricia Chen spoke up. I've reviewed the personnel file. Olivia Carter's promotion was recommended by 3 different managers before Mason approved it. Her performance reviews are exemplary. The timeline shows the promotion was in process before their relationship began. She looked around the table. Unless someone can show me actual evidence of impropriety, this looks like exactly what Mason says it is. 2 people who developed feelings while working together. The optics are still terrible, another board member argued. The optics are fine, Patricia countered. A hardworking single mother gets promoted on merit, her daughter saves the company from bankruptcy, and she develops a relationship with the CEO who's also a single parent. That's not a scandal. That's a human interest story. The debate raged for 2 hours. Finally, Richard called for a vote. All in favor of accepting Mason's disclosure and implementing the new workplace relationship policies he proposed? 6 hands went up. All opposed? 3 hands. Motion carries. Richard looked at Mason with something between respect and exasperation. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Mason admitted. After the meeting, Olivia grabbed his hand. We did it. We survived it. That's different from doing it. I'll take survival. They walked out of the boardroom together, and Mason felt lighter than he had in weeks. Not everyone was happy about the disclosure. There were still whispers, still judgment, still people who assumed the worst. But there were also supporters. Employees who sent Olivia messages of congratulation, people who appreciated the transparency, others who shared their own stories of workplace relationships that had worked out despite the complications. The media picked up the story, of course. Billionaire CEO falls for office worker made headlines for about a week before something more scandalous came along. Through it all, Mason and Olivia held steady. They had dinner together as a family, both kids, both adults, sometimes at his house, sometimes at her apartment. They did puzzles and played games and slowly built something that felt real and lasting. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt, still challenges they had to navigate. But it was real. And real, Mason was learning, was better than perfect any day. One evening, about 2 months after Emma's hospitalization, Mason found himself back in that same conference room where this had all started. The unsigned bankruptcy papers were long gone, shredded and forgotten. In their place was a framed certificate that Marcus had made as a joke, but Mason had kept. Emma Carter, honorary consultant, Whitmore Technologies, for services rendered in saving the company from itself. Mason ran his finger over the frame, remembering that day. The fear, the desperation, the moment a little girl had changed everything. His phone buzzed. Olivia. Emma wants to know if you're coming for dinner. She made something called mathematical pizza, and I'm afraid to ask what that means. Mason smiled and typed back, On my way. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, leaving the office behind without a second thought. 6 months ago, he would have stayed until midnight, working himself to death trying to save a company that was already saved. Now he knew better. The company would be there tomorrow. The work would always be there. But Emma's mathematical pizza, whatever that turned out to be, would only happen once, and that was worth more than all the board meetings in the world. Mathematical pizza, as it turned out, meant Emma had arranged the toppings in geometric patterns based on the Fibonacci sequence, pepperoni spirals and olive arrangements that actually followed a mathematical formula. This is either genius or insane, Mason said, staring at the pizza box on Olivia's kitchen counter. Why not both? Emma beamed up at him, sauce on her chin. Mrs. Rodriguez said we could apply math to anything, so I applied it to dinner. Jamie was less impressed. It looks weird. Weird is good, Emma insisted. Weird means you're thinking different. Weird means the pepperoni is all bunched up on one side and I can't get any. Mason cut the pizza carefully, trying not to destroy Emma's mathematical masterpiece while still giving Jamie a fair share. It was harder than it should have been, which pretty much summed up everything about his life lately. Complicated, but worth it. They ate dinner squeezed around Olivia's small kitchen table, elbows bumping, conversation flowing easily. Emma explained Fibonacci numbers with the kind of enthusiasm most kids reserved for toys. Jamie countered with a detailed breakdown of why Triceratops was the superior dinosaur. Olivia refereed their friendly debate while stealing glances at Mason that made his heart do stupid things. This was what he'd been missing. Not just for the 3 years since Rebecca died, but maybe his whole life. The noise and chaos and realness of people who actually cared about each other. After dinner, while the kids worked on a puzzle in the living room, Mason helped Olivia with dishes. You don't have to do that, she said, watching him scrub a plate. You're a guest. I'm not a guest. Guests don't show up 4 nights a week. Fair point. She handed him another dish. So I got a call from HR today. Mason's hand stilled. About what? They want me to speak at the company's Diversity and Inclusion Summit next month. Share my story about working my way up from the mailroom. She paused. They specifically mentioned how my unique journey represents the kind of opportunities Whitmore Technologies provides. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. Olivia dried a glass, not looking at him. Is this real, Mason, or are they just using me to make the company look good after all the bad press? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. She set down the glass harder than necessary. I don't want to be a token, the inspiring poor single mother who made good. That's not my story. Then what is your story? Olivia was quiet for a moment. My story is that I worked hard and got lucky and fell in love with someone who saw me as a person instead of a charity case. My story is that I'm still figuring it out, still scared most of the time, still wondering if I belong in rooms full of executives and board members. She looked at him. My story doesn't have a neat ending yet. No story worth telling does. Is that your way of saying I should do the speech? That's my way of saying you should do whatever feels right to you. If speaking helps other people like you, great. If it doesn't feel genuine, don't do it. Either way, I've got your back. Olivia smiled and kissed him, soft and quick. How did you get so supportive? I had a good teacher, small kid, big brain, knows her way around a spreadsheet. From the living room came Emma's voice. I can hear you talking about me. And you're doing it wrong. The corner pieces go first, Jamie. You said edge pieces. Corner pieces are edge pieces, just more specific. Mason and Olivia shared a look and went to referee. The next few months brought changes Mason hadn't anticipated. Good changes mostly, but changes nonetheless. Olivia did end up giving that speech at the Diversity Summit. She was nervous enough that Mason could see her hands shaking when she took the microphone. But once she started talking, something shifted. She told the truth. Not some sanitized corporate version, but the real story. About being 22 and pregnant and terrified. About working 2 jobs while Emma was a baby. About the shame of bringing your kid to work because you couldn't afford childcare and hoping nobody would notice. I didn't save Whitmore Technologies, Olivia said to a room of 300 employees. My daughter did. I was just trying to survive. But what I learned is that sometimes survival is enough. Sometimes showing up every day and doing your best even when you're exhausted and scared and completely out of your depth, that's the real work. And if this company is serious about providing opportunities, then it needs to support people who are just trying to survive long enough to succeed. The room erupted in applause. Mason watched from the back, his chest tight with pride and love and something he couldn't quite name. After the speech, at least a dozen employees came up to Olivia with their own stories. Single parents, people working multiple jobs, employees putting themselves through school while working full-time. The kinds of stories that usually stayed hidden because admitting struggle felt like admitting weakness. You started something, Mason told her later that night. I just told the truth. Exactly. And now other people feel like they can too. Within a month, Whitmore Technologies had implemented new policies. Better parental leave, subsidized childcare, emergency assistance funds for employees facing financial hardship. It wasn't Mason's doing alone. Patricia Chen had championed most of it, and Marcus had helped structure the programs. But it felt right in a way his previous business decisions never had. "Your father would have hated this," Marcus said one day, reviewing the budget for the new benefits package. "My father built a company," Mason replied. "I'm trying to build a community. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yeah, a company exists to make money. A community exists to take care of its people. If we do the second part right, the first part takes care of itself." Marcus smiled. "When did you become a philosopher?" "When I stopped being so focused on the legacy that I forgot about the people creating it. The changes weren't universally popular. Some board members grumbled about costs. A few executives complained that Mason had gone soft. There was a vocal minority who thought the whole thing was performative nonsense designed to cover up his relationship with Olivia. Mason didn't care anymore. He'd spent too many years worried about what people thought, about living up to his father's expectations, about being the kind of CEO who looked good in press releases. Now he just wanted to be the kind of person his son could be proud of, the kind of person Emma already believed he was. Speaking of Emma, she was thriving. The college fund had taken enormous pressure off Olivia, which meant Emma could explore her interests without the constant background worry about money. She joined the math club at school, started entering competitions, won a regional championship for students under 10, solving problems that made Mason's head hurt just looking at them. "I don't understand where she gets it from," Olivia said, watching Emma work through a problem set at the kitchen table. "I was good at math, but not like this. This is something else." "Maybe it's not about where she gets it from," Mason said. "Maybe it's just who she is." "You sound like a dad." "I'm trying to figure out how to be one. Turns out it's harder than running a company." Olivia laughed. "Is it? Way harder. Companies follow logic. Kids follow their own weird internal compass that makes no sense to anyone except them. And yet you keep showing up." "Yeah, I do." Because the truth was, Mason had fallen into a rhythm with all of this. The chaos of blended family dinners, the negotiations over whose turn it was to pick the movie, the late-night conversations with Olivia after the kids were asleep. It felt more real than anything he'd done in the previous 32 years. But there was still something missing, a question he hadn't asked yet, a step he hadn't taken. He finally took it on a Tuesday night in November, 6 months after Emma had collapsed in the hospital. No fancy restaurant, no elaborate plan. Just the four of them finishing dinner at his house, Emma and Jamie arguing about whether wormholes could actually work as time travel devices. Mason waited until there was a lull in the conversation, then cleared his throat. "Hey, I need to ask you guys something." 4 pairs of eyes turned to him. "Emma, Jamie, you know how your mom and I have been spending a lot of time together lately?" "You mean dating?" Emma said matter-of-factly. "Yeah, we know." "Okay, good. So here's the thing. I really like your mom. Like, really, really like her. And I like our family dinners and our puzzle nights and all of us being together. And I was wondering," he pulled out a small box from his pocket. "Emma, would it be okay with you if I asked your mom to marry me?" Emma's eyes went huge. "Like, marry? Like, forever? That's generally how marriage works, yeah. Would that make you my dad?" The question hit Mason square in the chest. "I could never replace your dad. I don't have a dad," Emma said simply. "I have a mom and a Jamie and a Mr. Whitmore. If you marry Mommy, would you be my dad instead of Mr. Whitmore?" Mason looked at Olivia, who had tears streaming down her face but was smiling. "If that's what you wanted," he said carefully. "I'd be honored." Emma thought about this very seriously. "Okay, you can ask her, but you have to do it right, with the kneeling and everything." "I can do that." "What about me?" Jamie piped up. "If you marry Miss Olivia, does that mean Emma's my sister?" "Yeah, buddy, it does." "Cool. Emma's smart. She can help me with homework." Emma giggled. "You're supposed to ask me if I'm okay with it too." "Are you okay with it?" "I guess. But you're doing my math homework, not English. English is boring." Mason laughed, feeling lighter than air. Then he turned to Olivia and actually got down on one knee, right there in his dining room with spaghetti sauce still on the table and 2 kids watching with undisguised fascination. "Olivia Carter, you walked into my life when I was at my lowest point. You and Emma saved me in ways that had nothing to do with decimal points, and everything to do with reminding me what actually matters. You made me want to be better, not just as a CEO, but as a person, as a father, as a man. I love you. I love Emma. I love the family we're building together. Will you marry me? Will? Olivia was ugly crying now, the kind of crying where your nose runs and your face gets blotchy, and you're too emotional to care about looking pretty. You're really asking me this in front of spaghetti. I'm asking you this in front of our kids and leftover dinner because this is real life, and real life is messy and imperfect and beautiful anyway. Yes. Yes, you absolute disaster of a man. Yes. Mason slipped the ring on her finger, a simple band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious because he knew Olivia would hate anything too flashy, and kissed her while Emma made gagging sounds and Jamie cheered. Does this mean we can move into the big house? Emma asked. Because our apartment is really small and Jamie's house has a pool. Emma, Olivia's voice was scandalized. What? I'm just asking practical questions. That's what you're supposed to do when people make big life decisions. Mason laughed so hard he nearly fell over. Yes, Em, you can move into the big house, pool included. Can I have my own room? You can have 2 rooms if you want. I only need 1, but it has to have a good desk for homework and lots of shelves for my books and puzzle storage. I think we can arrange that. They spent the rest of the evening planning, the kids getting increasingly excited about the logistics of combining households while Olivia and Mason just held hands and smiled at each other like idiots. Later, after the kids were asleep and Olivia was getting ready to head back to her apartment, Mason stopped her at the door. You know this is going to be complicated, right? Merging our lives, dealing with the company politics, figuring out how to actually parent together instead of just having fun dinners. I know. And there will be days when we fight and don't like each other very much and wonder what we were thinking. Probably. And Emma and Jamie might not always get along this well. And there will be teenage years and college decisions and all kinds of things we can't predict. Olivia cupped his face in her hands. Mason, stop catastrophizing. I know it won't be perfect. Nothing worth having ever is. But we'll figure it out together. That's the whole point. I just don't want to screw this up. You won't. And if you do, I'll be right there screwing it up with you. We're a team now. A team. A family. Yeah, a family. She kissed him goodnight and left, and Mason stood in his doorway watching her taillights disappear down the driveway. He was getting married to a woman he'd known less than a year, to a woman who worked for his company, to a woman who came with a brilliant, complicated 6-year-old who'd saved his life by spotting one wrong number in a sea of data. 6 months ago, this would have terrified him. Now it just felt right. The wedding happened 3 months later, in February, small and private, just immediate family and close friends. Marcus stood as Mason's best man. Emma was the flower girl and took her responsibilities so seriously that she actually measured the distance between each petal she dropped to ensure mathematical consistency. Jamie was the ring bearer and only dropped the rings once, which everyone agreed was a victory. Olivia walked down the aisle by herself. No father to give her away, because she was nobody's property to give. She wore a simple dress that cost less than some of Mason's suits, and she'd never looked more beautiful. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Nothing flowery or poetic, just honest promises about showing up and trying hard and loving each other, even when it was difficult. I promise to always see you, Mason said. Not the role you play or the job you do, but you. The woman who fights for her daughter, who isn't afraid to call me out when I'm being an idiot, who makes me want to be better just by existing. I promise to let you see me, Olivia replied. To stop hiding behind pride and fear. To ask for help when I need it. To build a life with you instead of just surviving next to you. They kissed, and Emma cheered, and Jamie made more gagging sounds. And it was perfect in its imperfection. The reception was held at Whitmore Technologies, in that same conference room where it had all started. Mason had wanted it there specifically to close the circle. Where he'd almost lost everything, now he was celebrating having gained so much more. During the speeches, Marcus told the story of the bankruptcy meeting, of Emma walking in with her spreadsheet, of how a 6-year-old had saved $1 billion company. But the real story, Marcus said, raising his glass, isn't about the money or the company or even the decimal point. It's about what happened after. About Mason learning to be human again. About Olivia learning to let someone in. About 2 broken people building something whole. That's the story worth telling. Emma gave a speech too, carefully prepared and rehearsed, about how she used to think math was the only thing that made sense. But now she knew that families made sense too, even when they didn't follow a clear formula. Sometimes the numbers don't add up the way you expect, she said, reading from note cards covered in her careful handwriting. Sometimes 2 + 2 equals a family, and that's the best kind of math. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, Mason found himself standing in front of the credenza where he'd placed 2 framed items side by side. The unsigned bankruptcy papers yellowed and faded now, and Emma's honorary consultant certificate, bright and new. Thinking about what could have been? Olivia appeared at his elbow, her hand slipping into his. Thinking about what is, Mason corrected. If I'd signed those papers, none of this would have happened. I'd have lost the company, probably spiraled into depression, definitely failed Jamie in ways I can't even imagine. One signature away from destroying everything. But you didn't sign. Because Emma walked in. Because she was brave enough to speak up. Because you were struggling enough that you had to bring her to work. Because of 1,000 tiny decisions and accidents that brought us all to that moment. He shook his head. Sometimes I wonder if I believe in fate. Do you? I think I believe in chance and choices. Chance put us in that conference room. But we chose what came after. We chose to see each other as people instead of roles. We chose to take risks and be vulnerable and build something real. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't sign those papers. Me too. They stood there for a while, watching their guests mingle, watching Emma explain something to a fascinated group of executives, watching Jamie steal cookies from the dessert table when he thought no one was looking. You know what I realized, Mason said. That day in the conference room, I thought I was losing everything that mattered. The company, the legacy, my father's dream. But I was wrong about what mattered. The company's just a company. The legacy is just a name. What matters is this. The people we love, the family we build, the life we actually live instead of the one we think we're supposed to have. That's very philosophical for a guy who used to think quarterly earnings reports were the meaning of life. I contain multitudes. Apparently, Emma ran up to them, breathless and excited. Dad, Jamie and I calculated how much cake everyone needs based on average consumption rates, and there's going to be extra. Can we take it home? Dad. She'd started calling him that about a week after the engagement, tentative at first, then with increasing confidence. Every time she said it, Mason's heart did a little flip. Sure, kid. We can take the extra cake home. Awesome. She started to run off, then turned back. Hey, Dad? Yeah? Thanks for fixing that number, the one on the spreadsheet. I checked the files and the company's actually doing really good now. We fixed it together. Yeah, but you did the hard part. You changed how the company works so it takes care of people better. That's harder than just fixing a decimal point. She ran off before Mason could respond, leaving him standing there with tears in his eyes. She's right, you know, Olivia said quietly. You did change things. Maybe not in the way your father would have, but in a way that actually matters. I had help. We all had help. That's the point. The party wound down eventually. Guests left, giving hugs and congratulations. Marcus clapped Mason on the shoulder and told him he'd finally gotten his priorities straight. Patricia Chen told Olivia she was the best thing that had happened to Whitmore Technologies in decades. Finally, it was just the 4 of them. Mason and Olivia, Emma and Jamie, standing in the parking lot as the sun set. Where to now? Olivia asked. We never actually planned a honeymoon because someone forgot to book anything. That someone was you, Mason pointed out. Details. How about home? Emma suggested. We can finish that 2,000-piece puzzle of the solar system. We're almost done with Jupiter. I'm tired of puzzles, Jamie whined. You're never tired of puzzles. You just don't want to admit Emma's better at them than you. Am not. Are too. Mason and Olivia shared a look over the kids' heads. Home sounds perfect, Mason said. So they went home. To the house that was slowly becoming theirs, not his or hers, but theirs. To the rooms Emma was already filling with books, and Jamie was decorating with dinosaur posters. To the kitchen where they'd learned to cook together, badly but enthusiastically. To the living room where puzzles permanently occupied one corner and probably always would. They didn't finish the Jupiter section that night. Jamie fell asleep halfway through, and Emma wasn't far behind. Mason carried them both upstairs, 1 kid per trip, tucking them into their respective rooms. When he came back downstairs, Olivia was standing at the window, looking out at the lights of the city. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we've come. About how 7 months ago I was terrified of losing my job and you were about to lose your company. And now we're here, married, building a life, raising kids who argue about dinosaurs and math puzzles." She turned to face him. "It doesn't feel real sometimes." "It's real." "How do you know?" "Because nothing this messy could be a dream. Dreams are perfect. This is chaos and compromise and two kids who need baths and a puzzle that's going to take up space in our living room for the next 3 months. This is life. Real, complicated, beautiful life." Olivia crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. "I love our messy life." "Me too." They stood there for a long time, just holding each other in the quiet house, listening to the sounds of their children breathing upstairs, feeling the weight and wonder of everything they'd built. Mason thought about that day in the conference room, about how close he'd come to signing away everything, about how one small voice had changed the trajectory of his entire existence. People talked about sliding door moments, about how life could pivot on tiny decisions. But this wasn't about doors or fate or destiny. This was about paying attention, about seeing the people right in front of you instead of looking past them, about learning that the most important numbers weren't in spreadsheets or quarterly reports, but in the faces of the people you loved. Emma had saved the company by spotting one wrong number, but she'd saved Mason by helping him understand what actually counted, not money or legacy or living up to dead father's expectations. Just this. Just family and love and showing up every day to do the hard, messy work of being human. In the end, that was the only calculation that mattered. And finally, after 32 years of trying to solve the wrong equation, Mason Whitmore had figured out the answer. It wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about never failing or always having the right solution. It was about finding the people who made you want to keep trying, the people who saw your mistakes and loved you anyway, the people who walked into your life at exactly the moment you needed them most, even if you didn't know it yet. Mason looked down at Olivia, at her head resting against his chest, at the ring on her finger catching the light. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For bringing Emma to work that day. For being brave enough to let her walk into that conference room. For giving me a chance, even when I didn't deserve it. For building this with me. You gave us a chance, too. Not everyone would have listened to a 6-year-old. Best decision I ever made." Upstairs, one of the kids called out in their sleep. Mason and Olivia separated reluctantly, heading up to check on them. Jamie was fine, just dreaming. They tucked his blanket tighter and closed the door quietly. In Emma's room, she was sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "Bad dream?" Olivia asked, sitting on the edge of the mattress. "No, good dream. I dreamed we were all together and happy." Emma looked around her new room, at the shelves Mason had installed last week, at the desk by the window, at the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. "But then I woke up and realized it was real." "It's real, baby." "Is it always going to be like this?" "Like what?" "Good. Safe. Together." Mason knelt down next to the bed. "I can't promise always, Em. Life's too complicated for always. But I can promise I'm going to try. Every single day I'm going to wake up and choose to be here, to be your dad, to take care of you and your mom and Jamie. That's what family means. Not that everything's perfect, but that we keep choosing each other." Emma thought about that with her usual seriousness. "That's a good promise." "Yeah?" "Yeah, numbers are absolute, but people are variable. You can't calculate love the way you calculate math problems. You just have to trust it." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just started paying attention." Mason laughed and kissed her forehead. "Go back to sleep, kid. We've got that Jupiter section to finish tomorrow. We're starting Neptune next. Jupiter's basically done. Whatever you say?" Emma settled back under her covers, and Mason and Olivia tiptoed out, leaving the door cracked so light from the hallway could filter in. Back in their own room, exhausted and happy, they finally collapsed into bed. "We did it," Olivia murmured into the darkness. "We actually pulled this off." "We're still pulling it off. This is just the beginning." "Is that supposed to be encouraging? Is it working?" Surprisingly, yes. They fell asleep tangled together, and in the morning, they'd wake up to the chaos of kids and breakfast and getting everyone ready for the day. There would be arguments about who got the last of the cereal and negotiations about screen time. There would be work stress and parenting challenges and a million tiny frustrations that came with real life. But there would also be laughter and puzzle pieces scattered across the living room floor, and a little girl who saw patterns in everything, who'd saved a company by paying attention when no one else did, who now had a family that would never let her doubt her worth. And there would be a man who'd learned that the most important legacy wasn't the one you inherited, but the one you built with your own hands, one messy, imperfect day at a time. The story of Whitmore Technologies would continue, of course. Companies have long histories and complicated futures. But the real story, the one that actually mattered, was simpler than quarterly reports and profit margins. It was the story of people who found each other when they needed it most, who took a chance on something uncertain, who built a family out of broken pieces and second chances, and one small voice that said, "Sir, this number is wrong." Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. One person brave enough to speak up, one person willing to listen, one moment of paying attention instead of looking past the people right in front of you. The rest is just math. And math, as Emma would tell you, always works out in the end if you're using the right formula. For Mason Whitmore and Olivia Carter, the formula turned out to be simple: love plus courage plus showing up every day, even when it's hard. The answer was family. And that was the only number that ever really counted.